Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Black Opal series. My name is Layla, and I will be your host. The Black Opal is a stone of veils, reflection, and protection. It doesn't just gleam, it reveals what lives in the shadows. And tonight, we're going to be diving deep into one of the oldest shadows known to human experience: spiritual vampires and magical parasites. You've heard the stories, you've seen the movies, but do you really know where these ideas come from? Before bloodsuckers with fangs and glistening skin, there was something older, more subtle, and far more real. Tonight's episode is 50% magic and 50% philosophy. We're going to go back through history, myth, and magical thought to understand the origins of these entities, their place in different belief systems, and how they're viewed in modern spirituality and hoodoo. To understand the origin of vampires and magical parasites, we must first understand the ancient fear that birthed them, the fear of losing the soul, the essence of the self. In Plato's Allegory of the Cave, he introduced us to a world where most people live in illusion, watching shadows flicker on the wall, believing them to be real. The true philosopher would escape the illusion and see the light of truth, but that light would burn. It isolated him from the rest. The illuminated soul would then be unembraced, feared, attacked, and even hunted. This philosophical awakening reveals a truth that echoes through every tradition. To be aware is to be vulnerable. Light makes you visible, and visibility draws hunger. In Gnosticism, this hunger had a name: archons. They were beings that were not evil in the cartoonish sense. They were administrators of illusion, spiritual jailers who would feed on the ignorance of humanity. Their power lied in keeping the divine spark asleep, bound to materialism, distraction, and forgetfulness. So while Plato warned us about illusion, Gnostics insist that illusion is actively weaponized. And those who see through it, they were hunted, not by coincidence, but by design. In Kabbalistic philosophy, we're brought closer to the spiritual mechanics. In the story of creation, divine light shattered and scattered, forming the universe. But it didn't land in purity. It fell into Qlipho, which were husks that clung to and corrupted the spark. These spiritual shells are parasitic by nature. They were hollow, and in their hollowness, they would latch onto anything with true divine force. They can't produce, only consume. And in the Kabbalah, the lesson was very simple. When you shine, something old and broken may try to cling to you. Another philosopher named Simone Weil, whose mystical insights bridge the ancient and the modern, wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." But she wasn't just speaking metaphorically. To give your attention is to give your energy. And in a world where everything fights for your focus, from screens, jobs, sorrows, and others, your spiritual sovereignty is under constant assault. She would warn that the distraction isn't just inconvenience, it was theft. So when you weave all of these concepts together, Plato's awakening, the Gnostic trap, the Qlipho's hunger, and Wei's sacred focus, a pattern emerges. The parasite doesn't begin with the fangs. It begins with the false light. It begins with systems built to drain, distort, and devour. These philosophies didn't just inform ancient spiritual thought. They are the bedrock of why we ward, why we cleanse, and why we must discern who or what is taken from us. Across the world, long before Hollywood glamorized the vampire, communities would tell stories of soul-sucking entities, not as entertainment, but as spiritual warnings. In ancient Mesopotamia, the demoness Lamashtu hunted pregnant women and newborns. She crossed thresholds in the night. She would drain life from those just beginning it, and her presence was not metaphorical. She was feared in childbirth, mourned in loss, and banished through ritual. The Slavic Strigoi were spirits of the restless dead. They were family members who returned not because they were evil, but because they were bound. Without proper rites, they lingered. Their hunger came from sorrow, not malevolence, but they drained all the same. We can also see these entities in the West African Adze, a vampiric entity that moves as light, a firefly that slips through the cracks to drink from the sleeping. It brings not death, but decay. Its victims would awaken tired, sick, or haunted. The Adze teaches us that parasites don't need to strike hard, they simply need access. In Jewish mysticism, Lilith is often misunderstood. She represents a force of feminine independence so strong she was vilified, rebranded as a devourer of children and a seducer, a demon. But if you look deeper, Lilith was never a monster. She was a refusal to submit. Her vampirism is a projection, fear of what can't be controlled. Each culture describes these beings not just by what they looked like, but by what they did. They drained, they clung, they corrupted, and they always targeted the vulnerable, infants, sleepers, the grieving, and the gifted. And now today, these ancient truths have been softened, diluted, but not erased. We now say energy vampire. We speak of cord cutting and spiritual hygiene, but the essence is the same. Something unseen has access to your life force, and it doesn't belong there. So in modern magic circles, we call them thought forms, attachments, shadows, or even low vibrational entities. But in the rush to spiritualize everything, we sometimes forget these concepts aren't trendy. They're really ancient. Media doesn't help. It just shows and exposes more of a fear and an illusion, something that is not real. Hollywood would give fangs and seduction and jump scares, which is rarely the truth. The reality is the quiet kind of feeding, the kind that feels like depression, confusion, or obsessive thoughts. The worst thing is that media often demonizes the very traditions that protect us against such feedings and such entities. Whether those are Hoodoo rituals, ancestral prayers, candle work, all of them have been portrayed as dark or chaotic when they've saved lives for centuries. So it's important for us to be cautious, not just of what drains you, but of what misleads you as well. The wrong story can be just as dangerous as the wrong spirit. In Hoodoo tradition, we don't romanticize the parasite. We name it, we move it, we seal it. When someone's aura is off, the elders don't need to ask a million questions. They say she got a spirit riding her, or that boy stepped into something he wasn't meant to. These aren't metaphors, they're diagnoses. Hoodoo recognizes when love turns to bondage, when dreams feel knotted, when a home grows heavy, and it meets that imbalance with action. Spiritual baths with hyssop, rue, floor washes with camphor or ammonia, mirror work to reflect attacks, and psalmic prayers to shield the soul were different ways of protection in Hoodoo, and not just paranoia. It was preservation, because when you carry light, you need to know how to lock your door. So let's return once more to the mind. Because even without spirits or entities, the greatest parasitic force you'll ever face is your own unchecked thoughts. Plato warned of shadows, Gnostics warned of illusions, Jung warned of the unconscious, the part of us that hides our pain until it becomes fate. All of them agree. What is unexamined becomes dangerous. You don't need to be haunted by a demon to be drained. Shame can do it, guilt, resentment, self-sabotage. Each one of these patterns can act like a parasite, drawing from your spirit without giving anything back. But the same way a ritual can cleanse a home, reflection can cleanse the mind, meditation, shadow work, honest prayer, stillness, these are not new age fads. They are ancient practices of spiritual defense. And when paired with ancestral wisdom, with Hoodoo's grounded tools and other spiritual beliefs systems, philosophy's higher lens, you overall can become both your own shield and your own sanctuary. So, what is a vampire? What is a parasite? It is anything seen or unseen that survives by stealing what was never freely given. And more often than not, it enters not through force, but through silence, through habit, through belief. But you are not helpless. When you know your history, when you sharpen your perception, when you honor your traditions, you walk with power, you walk protected. This concludes tonight's episode. This has been another lovely episode of the Black Opal series, and we are going to go into part 2 where we dig more into spiritual vampirism and magical parasites and the different ways you could protect and ground yourself from them. With that being said, guarded with truth, rooted in philosophy, wrapped in ancestral wisdom, this is the ending of another episode of the Black Opal series. Walk with clarity, speak with power, and protect what is sacred. Until next time, that's it. Peace.